Hello, everyone, at whatever time you are watching this, whether you're watching this live or on the replay, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Timothy Waterman. I am a life transformation coach, life transformation guide, you could say. I'm also a conscious channel, and essentially the main thing that I do is I help people align themselves with their own intuitive voice because often when life does not feel like it's working, when life feels like it's frustrating, when we feel like we're lost, what I have found is that typically it's because we're not hearing our inner guiding light. We're not hearing our intuition and we're not aligning with the steps that is inviting us to take in our lives. Therefore, we've kind of strayed from our most ideal path. And when we're not living our most ideal path, well, typically that results in things like feeling unhappy, feeling unfulfilled, feeling lost, feeling confused. So I love to help people realign themselves with their inner guiding light, as I did back when I was 30 years old. That was about 10 years ago now. That's when my life changed. That's when I had a complete transformation of my life experience, night and day transformation. If you'd like to learn more about that, there is a link in this video description where you can see me describe my own life transformation experience. So that's a bit about how I help people, and thanks for letting me share that. Today, I am here to speak on something that's very important to me because this is where my transformation journey actually began. And it was when I began to recognize how negative my thoughts were, how fast paced and how fast paced and worrisome my thoughts were. And it was way too much. It was just so mentally exhausting. And I knew I needed a change. So everything began to change when I started to focus on the relationship I was having with myself. So that's the topic today. And I'm going to give you three ways that I am suggesting, I'm putting forth as an option to begin to shift the relationship that you are having with yourself. If these options speak to you, there's never any shoulds or musts here. Like, these are just things I'm offering as options, and things that have really helped me and continue to help me. So I'll be putting those forth, and then I'm going to begin with a little bit of context and, speaking to the question, why do we tend to have such a negative and critical relationship with ourselves in the first place? Like, why are we wired like that? I'm going to get into that a little bit. So that's what you can expect from this broadcast. Typically, I go somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes. And at the end of this broadcast, I do have a gift to offer as a thank you for watching and watching all the way through. So please feel free, if you feel called, to stay tuned, and I'll share what that free gift is at the end of this broadcast. So here we go. Here we go, jumping in. So starting off with the question, why are we wired so negatively towards ourselves? I'm just going to pause real quick and just open my chat because I do love when people are watching live, just to be able to interact. And again, if you're on the replay and want to leave a comment or aha, I really appreciate those. Appreciate those too, because it yeah, it just helps me see what people are getting from these shares that I'm putting forward, and I love to see what people get from it. So just know that even if you're on the replay, I do love to see comments and ahas. Okay, side note complete. So answering that question, why are we wired so negatively towards ourselves? The thing that really helped me understand how my mind got to be the way it was, especially towards the end of my 20s, was when I realized how our brain develops early in life. So I'm talking about years 1 to 7. And it's a pretty commonly held, um, what's the word? It's a pretty commonly held understanding that in the first 7 years of our life, more specifically 1 to 7, we're in what's called a theta brainwave state most of the time. And what that means, what I found that means, is that our brain is very open, it's very receptive, and it's really beginning to organize itself in terms of beliefs about self, beliefs about the world, our thoughts about different things, our interpretations and perceptions of things. Like that's all really being formed heavily between the ages of 1 to 7. And again, the way that I like to look at it is our brain is like very open, doesn't really have any assumptions, and it's like a sponge. So it's absorbing all of these beliefs, absorbing all of these perspectives, throughout that period of time. So whatever beliefs that we are most dominantly exposed to really can become finely tuned, ingrained within our mind. So for example, to put this into context, even as early as the age of like 5, 6, 7, if we're going to school and we see a pattern in our world that like our guardians are only happy with us when we get good grades or when we get a prize or something like that. Even that early on, our brain can begin to associate that, like, oh, I get praise when I do a good job on the assignment. And if I don't do a good job on the assignment, the experience may have varied for all of us. But if there was ever like negative feedback or, like you need to try harder, or like, if there was any kind of like negative feedback, again, our brains being so impressionable, like that really could have hit very deeply within us for our inner child. So, and if we were told things, like, when you do that, you're a bad boy, or just if there was any, kind of like aggressive tone or behavior towards us in those ages, we may have really taken that on in a very deep way. We might have started to form beliefs about ourselves that were kind of heavy, and began to shape the way that we see ourselves in a negative way. So that's kind of baseline. That's baseline. From there, once we kind of have that perception or some of those perceptions about ourselves, when we go out into the world, our brain, once it has a dominant belief or once it has a strong belief, it kind of looks for evidence in the world for more clues, more pieces of the puzzle that fit with that narrative. And so if there's this negative belief that, like, oh, I'm only lovable when I do a good job, or I'm only lovable when I get a good grade, or when I'm, perfect, so to say, if there's more feedback from like a teacher, if there's more feedback from other peers that align with that perspective, then it's just like more evidence, it's more data that's added to that assumption about self. And we continue to be kind of impressionable as young people. So if there is a lot of negative feedback in the school that we went to, and we start to take those beliefs on about ourselves, whether it is from, other kids at school, whether it's from a teacher, whoever it might be, even like a piano teacher, whoever it might be, if we absorb those perspectives and we really invest in them, we kind of like collect them in this sandbox or this toolbox of beliefs that I have about myself. And again, once we invest in those beliefs, we kind of go out into the world, and every time we see an example of evidence that fits with those beliefs, we add that evidence to the collection, and you could say the belief becomes stronger. And so by the time, we're 18, we could have some really heavy and negative beliefs about ourselves. And we might have never really ever told anyone about it because a lot of times we feel shameful about having these beliefs. We feel ashamed of ourselves for even feeling bad about ourselves. So we don't really talk about it. And so now we go into, let's say, college or a career. There could be even more evidence that our brain collects in terms of those really strong beliefs that we developed early on. Again, I'm only lovable when I do a good job, or I'm only lovable because of my looks. We might have been told from a young age, like, oh, you're so pretty, or you're so handsome, especially when your hair is like that, or especially when you wear those clothes. even something like that, we can begin to put our self-worth into looks, into feeling like we have to look a certain way in order to feel good about ourselves. So if then we get something like acne or, pimples as a teenager, that can hit really hard if we're used to associating our self-worth with our looks, for an example. Or, if we're told, we're not attractive in some way and we really believe that, that can continue to affect us down the line. And so again, then there comes potentially college, then there comes career, and our brain can continue to look for evidence that aligns with these dominant beliefs. So you might have noticed that it's the beliefs that are really powerful here. And when you begin to understand how the brain works, how it collects evidence based on its dominant beliefs, then you can kind of start to see, in the day to day, you might have more awareness in the day to day of how your brain is searching for that. It's looking to affirm these beliefs essentially. So having that awareness is really powerful because once you have the awareness, then you can begin to kind of pause in some of these momentums of thought. You can really begin to pause and begin to just see how your mind has organized itself, see the types of thoughts that it's very invested in. And that's a really powerful place to be. That's conscious awareness. So once you're consciously aware of some of these thought patterns, the next thing I love from that place is that then we can begin to question them. And questioning beliefs, questioning thought patterns is so powerful to me because when we begin to question them, they can start to lose their power, the grip that they have had on us. And when these beliefs begin to lose their power, that's great because then they don't have the same momentum that they once did. So we can begin to consciously contemplate some of these beliefs that we once unconsciously assumed. So, for instance, is it true that I'm only worthy of love if I get good grades or if I knock the assignment out of the park? Is that true? Do I make that true for other people? Do I only love other people based on their results? Do I only love other people based on their circumstances? Or do I love other people because of who they are? I've done this for myself. I look at other people in my life and I say, like, do I love them because of how good they did on their last assignment? Do I love them because of their GPA that they got in college? Do I love them based on their looks? And for me, the answer tends to be like, no, no, no. And the answer that I find again and again is I love them because they're them. Like, I love them because they're them. And so if it's really easy for me to see that for someone else, then it's like, oh wow, like why have I not been doing that for myself? And can I start to do that for myself? Can I begin to let go of all these conditions that I've assumed need to be there in order for me to be worthy of love? So that's been really powerful for me is to question these narratives and then begin to see like, do I do this for other people? Answer tends to be no. And so if I'm not doing it for other people, why do I keep insist on doing it for myself? So again, these awarenesses are really powerful because then I can begin to let go of these habits. When I see these active habits of thought, then I can begin to say in the moment, say like, oh no, I don't really want to continue this momentum of thought. Like I want to interrupt, I want to shift, I want to practice something new, practice something else. Like I want to begin to see myself the way that I tend to see other people, which is, in a very positive light, in the light of love. I want to begin to do that for myself. So for me, again, it was really powerful to understand how the mind works early in life, to understand how I got to where I got towards the end of my late 20s. Because, when we have these negative thought patterns about ourselves, first and foremost, we tend to settle for, at least I did, and I've seen other people have this kind of like share about their life, that we can really settle for other people talking to us that way as well. So if we're already talking to ourselves really negatively in our mind, we might settle for a romantic partner that also speaks very negatively towards us, a good portion of the time. And that's not helpful either because then that just reinforces all of those negative beliefs because we already have them going on the inside. So now if we have someone who's by our side a good amount of the time and they also speak very negatively to us, that can just reinforce all of that. So again, it's so powerful to see where we're at with compassion, with love, with grace, and just recognize, I don't have to keep doing this to myself. I don't have to keep investing in these beliefs, these unconscious beliefs that I once adopted earlier in life. So, for example, I'm only worthy of love when I get good grades. I'm lovable because of my looks. I'm lovable because of my performance, like whether you're like a singer or a dancer or, you were in school plays, questioning those beliefs because sometimes they are still playing out as an adult. Questioning those beliefs can be so, so powerful because, again, it kind of interrupts that momentum that we've had for most of our lives. So there's some context, there's some understanding. I hope that's been helpful. So now to get into the three ways that I'd like to put forth, as an option if they speak to you to begin to shift the relationship that you're having with yourself. So option number one is to begin to write love letters to yourself. And this might sound a little bit funny at first. However, I've led a whole challenge on this. I led a challenge on this with like 40 people, I believe. And the feedback I was getting right away, like, day one, day two, people were telling me, like, this is so powerful. This is so powerful for me to take the time, even if it's just 5 minutes in the morning, and just say nice things, And it might be helpful to imagine if you do have someone who's loving in your life, someone who's loving and kind and supportive, imagine the types of things that they would say to you first thing in the morning if they really wanted to encourage you and lift you up and let you know that you're appreciated. What would they say to you that might help you get outside of yourself so you can think of some nice things to say? Even if it's just 5 minutes in the morning, what are some nice things I want to say to myself? Some appreciative things, uplifting things, encouraging things, so that you begin to get used to what that feels like, what that sounds like. It's practice, it's a new narrative. Our minds tend to work on narratives, and narratives come from beliefs. So, if we want to introduce new narratives, this can be a really powerful way to do that, to begin to practice the new narrative first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning is so powerful because it can really set the tone for at least the rest of the morning, if not the entire day. Positive, loving, affirming self-talk. So if I were beginning, like I would commit to doing that for myself for at least 33 days. Habits and new ways of thinking, new ways of being typically take time and practice to adopt. So if I was just starting out, I would say, hey, this is really important to me. I want to shift the way I feel about myself. I want to shift my beliefs and the way I talk to myself. I want to be more supportive, affirming, loving, and kind. And so I'm going to do this for the next 33 days, even if it's just 5 minutes in the morning. I'm going to write a love letter to myself, even if I have to imagine someone else who loves me saying the words. That's what I'm going to do for myself as a practice. And the people that I took through this challenge, this 40-day challenge, it was for 33 days. And I had a number of people tell me, like, I'm going to keep doing this because this is really helpful. This is really helpful. So I'm going to keep doing this and I'm going to go beyond the 33 days. I feel like someone told me they did it for like months. They did it for like months because it was that powerful for them. So that's option number one. Option number two has to do with, again, getting outside of ourselves, our normal way of seeing and perceiving the world, and really stepping into that connection to that which is greater. So, whatever your relationship is to, a higher power, as they say, whether you call that God, whether you call that source energy, whether you call that universe, higher self, your soul, whatever you experience as like the greater connection, the power, the energy behind all of creation, because we are a part of creation. These human bodies are a piece of the earth. Our souls come from the original creator, again, whatever you call that for you. And to me, this is something I've really practiced. And so this is what I'm suggesting is just to see how loved we are by the source of creation. I mean, for example, every time I go to take a breath, it's there. During this speech, this talk, I don't even know how many breaths I've taken. I don't have to think about it because the breath is always there. Every day there's sunlight for me to be able to see and appreciate the earth. There's if you ever walk barefoot on the grass, grass tends to be so soft. There's cushioning on the earth to make it feel nice for my feet. This earth is constantly producing food and water to sustain my body, constantly producing food and water in abundance. And so when I look at the evidence of creation, like all of these resources are here to support me and having this human journey. And to me, that says that I am loved. It's just a constant reminder that I am loved for exactly who I am, exactly where I'm at. I do have free will, so what I make of this life is up to me. And there's so much support for me to have this life and to do with it what ultimately I feel is best to do with it. And again, just looking at the evidence of how loved I am. So if you have supportive friends, that's another example of love that's coming from creation because they are also a part of creation. Every time you get a compliment, every time you do get a love note, every time you get a text message from a friend thinking of you, start to look for the examples of how loved and supported you are by creation because that's all coming for you. I hope you're able to hear that and take that in. You know, the oxygen in the air, the sunlight, the water, the food, the earth, the grass. If you've ever had loving pets, kind friends, kind supportive family, kind supportive partner, this is, a teacher that believed in you. These are all examples of creation supporting you. And so to me, it was really helpful to see that that is because I'm loved. I'm loved by the bigger picture. I'm loved by the source behind creation. So I would just offer to see if you're able to let that in, if you're able to start to see the examples of that. Because again, when we train our mind to see examples of something like how loved and supported we are, the more that we see it, the more that we see it. There's actually something in the brain, I believe it's called the reticular activating system, I want to say. I might be saying it slightly wrong. But it basically looks for evidence. Once we assume something, that reticular activating system looks for evidence of that belief. So if we're willing to step into the belief more that we're loved and supported, and we really want to invest in that, that reticular activating system will begin to look for evidence of that. And it'll begin to collect that type of evidence, which is really cool. Because again, the more we see it, the more we see it. It's kind of like the same thing if you see a car you really like and you really like it, all of a sudden you start to see that car everywhere. Yeah, because once we pay attention to something, we start to notice more of that, even if it's a new belief and a new narrative that we're willing to adopt. The final step number 3 that I'm offering it's another way of looking for evidence, and it's just to start to notice the nice things that people have to say about you. Like if you're ever getting compliments, it's like, are you really receiving that? If people look forward to spending time with you, if they look forward to catching up with you, that means people like you. That means people want to be around you. If you're getting compliments out of nowhere, like people like and appreciate you enough to really go out of their way to say something and share that. So I would offer just really start to notice the evidence of the wonderful qualities that you do already have. And maybe you're working on things, maybe you're working on your anger, maybe you're working on complaining less, things like that. If you're working on things, that's fine. We're all a work in progress. However, start to look at the wonderful qualities that you have and that people really appreciate about you. And then also, I would offer look to start seeing that for yourself, even if it's at the end of the day, where you just reflect on how you showed up in that day. Like, did you smile at people during the day? Did you hold the door open for anyone? Did you send thoughtful text messages to anyone? Were you conscious and kind in your responses to like emails and comments on your social media, whatever it might be? Start to really see yourself and the positive, loving and kind qualities you already have, and really start to see that and just reflect on, oh man, people do tell me I'm really kind. People do tell me I'm really thoughtful. People do tell me that I have a warm or positive energy. People really like to be in my presence. Start to really see that for yourself. See if you can let that in more. And then again, it might be helpful to reflect at the end of each day, who was I today? How did I express myself? Was I a kind and cheery person to cross paths with? And if I was, great, like great, really celebrate that and appreciate that for yourself. Because again, the more we see it, the more we see it. And when we put our focus on expands. So if we're focusing on what we call negative qualities about ourselves and we keep our focus there, that tends to keep us feeling rather low and more defeated. If we put the shift on, oh my gosh, look at all these wonderful ways that I'm showing up, that I'm expressing, that I'm being helpful or kind, uplifting, cheery, any of these things, then we'll begin to notice more of that because what we focus on and our awareness expands. So I hope that helps. Hope that helps. That's the gist of what I had to offer for today. So I hope it has been helpful. And now to get to the free gift that I mentioned earlier on in the broadcast. So if this content, if this message has spoke to you, if it's been impactful for you, I'm going to offer for the next 10 days here. So today is the 5th of September. So let's say through September 15th, I'm going to make this available. It's basically a complimentary, a free self-love strategy session. And essentially what that is designed to do is just to help you have some breakthroughs in your awareness as to where you could maybe let go of some things about yourself that still trouble you. Or maybe it's just more practices to help you see yourself in a better light. A lot of times, what I feel is keeping us very heavy and burdensome about ourselves are things that happened in the past, things that we can't let go of, things that we're still beating ourselves up about. And so, what I've been told in the sessions that I've had with previous clients is they love the questions that I ask. So, I listen to people talk, I listen to people open up. Time and time again, I've heard people tell me that they really feel safe in a conversation with me. So they feel safe enough to open up and share what's really going on a very deep level without feeling judged in my presence. So I'm really thankful to have received that feedback many, many times. And based on what I hear, again, without judgment, these intuitive questions come to mind to help people begin to see things in a new light, see things in a new way. And a lot of times, once they see these beliefs or what they've been telling themselves in a new light, all of a sudden, again, with having questioned it, all of a sudden they begin to get some of their power back because they see it in a completely new way. And when they see it in a new way, that old belief or that old way of seeing themselves or what they've been believing about themselves can kind of begin to fall apart based on these intuitive questions that come up for me to ask. And so my goal or my aim in these sessions, these calls will be about 20 to 25 minutes. We can do it on something like WhatsApp or Google Meet. My goal is to give you at least 1 to 3 insights in terms of how you can have a better relationship with yourself. Or you could call them potentially 1 to 3 breakthroughs, at least 1 to 3 insights and maybe some breakthroughs as well in terms of how you can begin to shift the relationship that you're having with yourself. So again, this is complimentary. These calls will be about 20 to 25 minutes in length. And again, my aim is to give you the most powerful insights and breakthroughs I can in that time to help you begin to shift the relationship that you're having with yourself ultimately, so hopefully you can begin to feel better about yourself, potentially maybe even right away, because some of these breakthroughs, when they happen, like, they're fast. And then all of a sudden we have a release where we just release some of these, the power we've been giving to these beliefs about ourselves. And when we release these beliefs, it's just like, I mean, I'll never forget. I once went to this event in Los Angeles for a friend. It had to do with a show they wanted to produce and a show they were putting together. And I saw someone at the show that I hadn't spoken to in a while, and we were just catching up, and they were telling me about their lives and how they were feeling about themselves. And I just saw their beliefs in that moment, and I asked them, because I didn't want to just, like, put it out there without asking, but I asked them, like, are you open to me sharing a new way of, like, seeing yourself in terms of some of these life situations? And that person said yes. And I just shared different ways to see it, and I'll never forget, in that moment it was like this light went on behind their eyes. And all of a sudden I could see that some of that immense power they had been giving to some of these beliefs about themselves really began to shift in that moment, because all of a sudden they could see it differently. All of a sudden, the momentum behind these negative beliefs they had assumed about themselves began to lift in that moment. And not only did I see, like, a light go on behind their eyes, I just saw, like, a smile start to come out. I saw them begin to relax in that moment. And this was just, a conversation, catching up with someone that I hadn't seen in a little while. So knowing, what I've done before, knowing the feedback that I get from the clients I've worked with over the past 3 years, I have no doubt that in 20 to 25 minutes, I can at least give you 1 to 3 insights that'll help you begin to shift the relationship you're having with yourself. If not, one or more potential breakthroughs, that may just be a bonus. Potentially there could be one or more breakthroughs in terms of the relationship you're having with yourself. That's my aim. That's my goal. And, I always do my best to deliver to my fullest potential. So if that interests you, what I'm going to invite you to do is either leave a comment on this post or send me a direct message with the words that say, I'm ready. So again, whether it's a comment on this post or sending me a direct message, just say, I'm ready. And if you send that in the next 10 days, whether it's here on Facebook or on YouTube, if you send that in the next 10 days, then I'll know what you're talking about, because that's the phrase to take me up on this self-love strategy call. Again, it will last about 20 to 25 minutes. It can be on WhatsApp or Google Meet. And yeah, I will do my best to give you the best that I can give you in that time frame. So again, the phrase I'm ready, whether it's a comment on this post or if you're on Facebook, you can send me a direct message. So that is what I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back again tomorrow, which is September 6th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Tomorrow the topic will be, it's going to be a very deeply spiritual topic and discussion, and it has to do with a wisdom phrase that's been passed down through the centuries that says, what we are looking for is what is looking. And that's a reference to humanity tends to be searching for something, always searching for something. And a lot of times we think it's out there in the world. And what that phrase is referring to is that what we're looking for is actually already inside of us. To me, it's that connection of the soul, the true self, the eternal self. And so I'll be speaking on that tomorrow. I'll be getting more in depth on how reconnecting with my soul in a powerful way is what really also began to shift my life super powerfully. I had like an opening up period, starting around 28, and then I had a massive reconnection with my soul, which is where my intuition comes from, when I was about 32. And man, that was such a powerful wake up to living my life in a connected way, a more empowering way, a more exciting way. So I'll be getting a little bit more into that tomorrow. diving into that realization of what we are looking for is what is already looking through our eyes, if you will. So I'll get more into that tomorrow. Thank you again so much for watching. I know I went a little bit over time today. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. So I do my best to keep it within 30 minutes, but sometimes I do go a little bit over. So thanks again for watching. I hope to see you on a future broadcast. Again, if you got any ahas that you'd like to share in the replay, I love to see the comments there as well. Until next time, hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and namaste.